So, guys, we are live. Good morning. Happy Friday to you guys. It's me, Antoine Lunsford, your host for Antoine and Friends. Guys, have a very special guest. One of my favorite authors. You're going to love to hear her today. I have the one and only Christine Turner Jackson on the show today. She's going to be reading some excerpts from her book called Pitch Black. So that's all I want to say. I'm not going to give too much away. I want you guys to enjoy her. Listen to the story. You're really going to love it, guys. I guarantee you guys will be inspired. Okay. So, guys, this is the one and only Christine Turner Jackson. Chris, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Antoine. And welcome, everybody. This is a great opportunity. So without further ado, I'm just going to say, in the midst of all of that is going on with COVID and all the travel restrictions, reading a book to take you anywhere you want to go around the world and any place and time that you may want to go. So today, we are going to go back to January 1952. Pitch Black took place here in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to introduce you to the main character, which happens to be my dad, Benjamin Randolph Turner, otherwise known as Benny, and he is going to hopefully inspire you through his life growing up here in D.C. So let's begin. Chapter 1 of my book was actually the hardest to pen because I wanted to make sure that I gave you enough detail to visualize the neighborhood here where Benny grew up, long before the Washington Nationals baseball stadium actually was constructed here in Southwest. So chapter 1, A Sad Farewell, January 14th, 1952. The cold, frigid wind blew the limbs of the maple trees that stretched across the street. The last school bell had rung over 30 minutes ago. The last few small groups of boys and girls clumped together as they laughed and horsed around, chasing each other along the dirt path as they headed home. "Come on, Benny," Teddy called behind him, shuffling his short legs in double steps. It was hard for Teddy to keep up with the other boys whose long legs glided in single strides down the street. Teddy was tripping over his own feet as he tried to keep pace with his group. While walking backwards to encourage his best friend Benny to catch up, today, Benny wanted to be left behind. "Go ahead, man," Benny yelled back. "I'll meet you at Normandy's." Benny waved his hand across his chest and across the bill of his cap between his fingers as one of their secret baseball gestures to reassure Teddy that it was okay to walk ahead without him. Teddy smiled and motioned back. The two boys had been best friends since Benny and his mother, Lena, had moved back with his grandfather midway through his 4th grade year at Kelly Miller Elementary School. Now both were 14 years old and about to end 8th grade at Banneker Junior High School. Today, Teddy would be known as Theodore otherwise by his teachers. And he had begun to depend on Benny to defend him whenever the roughneck boys from Southwest, considered the worst section of DC, would pick on him. "I just ain't in the mood for talking and laughing today," Benny muttered to himself. His chest began to burn as his stomach thrashed about. He fumbled through his jacket pocket to pick out a crumpled piece of paper. It was the letter that Principal Johnston had given him to give to Pop-Pop. "Dear Mr. Turner, I have become very concerned with the home situation of your grandson, Benjamin Turner, which seems to lack the necessary adult supervision for a young man his age. Serious consideration needs to be given to removing him from a potentially detrimental environment and placing him with a family who is better able to properly take care of him. Social Services has begun the process of seeking a family member or foster family who can assist in providing supervision for your grandson during your illness. Sincerely, Timothy W. Johnston, Principal, Banneker Junior High School." Benny rolled his eyes After reading the letter, he crumpled it back into a tight ball and stuffed it back into his pants pocket. Benny looked up to the evening sky and yelled up to the clouds, "Ugh, detrimental. What is detrimental about living with Pop-Pop? He loves me." I guess that word must have meant a lot to old Principal Johnston, because he sent Miss Ward, the social worker from the school, to visit Pop-Pop yesterday morning while I was at school. She just had to write up that report telling Pop-Pop that if he couldn't find another relative to take care of me, I'd be put in foster care, Benny snapped. Now, going along further in the chapter, Pop-Pop was nothing but a thin line of bones hidden underneath the heavy, rough blanket. His beige-colored skin dangled loosely from his body. Looking into his large, sunken eyes was as if staring at the face of a raccoon. The large, dark circles and white whiskers almost dominated his face. His high cheekbones, arrow-straight nose, and straight gray hair resembled a noble, respected Native American chief. For a man nearly 80 years old, his mind was still sharp, even though he had lost all of his teeth. He could recall every detail of Benny's life from the time his mother brought him home from the hospital as an infant to the day he was excited about finally graduating from elementary school and going to junior high school. "Yes, sir," Benny responded as he continued to wipe the remaining particles of cheese from his chapped lips. "Are you okay, son?" Pop-Pop looked into Benny's face. Benny could smell the sour odor that escaped from his shirt. Pop-Pop slowly turned his head towards Benny, where he was standing. "I know the people at the school done told you that you're going to have to live with Unc," Pop-Pop said, his voice just above a whisper. "And I know you're upset about having to live with Unc and leave here. But you know how much I love you, now don't you?" Pop-Pop asked. Benny tried to muster up a strong response, but he could barely get the words out of his mouth. "You know that I could let you stay here if I were better. You know I would." Pop-Pop's voice cracked as his eyes began to shine like glass. Benny shook his head and faintly responded, "Yes, sir. But I'm not as spry as I used to be, and I can't keep up with you like I used to. Do you remember when I taught you how to pitch that fastball over yonder on Greenleaf Ballpark?" Pop-Pop asked. Pop-Pop's eyes widened, make sure that he could get Benny's attention. Before Benny could respond, Pop-Pop continued to recall the good times that he and Benny had. Looking intensely into Benny's eyes, Pop-Pop said, "I know nothing's fair in this world, son. Being Black, being an old man, or being a smart boy like yourself with no mama and daddy to take care of you," Pop-Pop said as he tried to suddenly regain strength into his body. Now I'm going to jump ahead. Let your imagination just marinate for a minute. A lot happens between chapters 1 and now chapter 6. And this is where I'm going to pick up. It's summertime. And just like a lot of friends, they want to hang out, Benny and his new friends. And just like friends do, sometimes you make some bad decisions. So chapter 6 is called A Dangerous Adventure. Gives you a bird's eye view into how a bad decision plays out for Benny and his new friends. As they walked past Unc's yard, Benny tossed his baseball glove onto the porch so it landed under the swing. Teddy tried to strike up conversation with Pudge as they walked next to each other down the street. "So how'd you do last grading period?" Teddy asked the Pudge as he struggled to keep up with his slightly faster stride. "Reporting period? Man, I barely made it out of junior high school. Heck, I'm just glad I saw all them D's on my report card," Pudge replied as he belted out a laugh. Okay," Teddy responded with a look of bewilderment. Pretty soon, Teddy found himself catching up to keep pace with Benny, who was outpacing everyone else. "We got to get over here and back before Unc gets home." Benny whispered to Teddy. Now, if you don't want to do this, we can always say that we forgot to do some chores and we can go back to Unc's house. Nah, man, this is the most fun I've had in a long time, Teddy insisted. Besides, I've got to prove to these cats that I can hang since I'm going to be moving up here soon. All right, but stay close to me once we get over to the other side, Benny whispered in a fatherly tone. Man, this is a hike, Pudge complained. This heat is draining me. I bet I lost about 10 pounds already. I know, man, I can't afford to lose any more weight, Kirby replied, wiping sweat as it dripped from his forehead. Don't know why y'all complaining, Pat said as he wiped sweat from his face. Remember, y'all wanted to walk over here, he continued, rolling his eyes in disgust. The boys' trek across the bridge soon ended at a complete stop as they all suddenly took a view of what was ahead of them. They went and entered into Southeast. Have you ever seen so much green grass before you in all your life? Benny exclaimed. Southeast was the all-white section of DC, where the baseball fields were considered the best playing fields in the city. The grass was freshly cut, and the baseball diamond was perfectly shaped. The boys' club's teams wore uniforms that used equipment and resembled a minor league baseball team. Hey, there's the Spartan field over there, Teddy yelled out as he trotted towards the open gate. And now I'm going to forward wind to chapter 9, A Sense of Purpose. Now, have you ever tried to audition or try out for a sports team, a club, or organization? Well, that's what Benny experiences in this chapter. Okay, coach, I'm ready, Benny replied. Benny took one long swallow of the little spit that remained in his mouth. He wound up his arm and threw a few practice pitches to the catcher, 10th grader named Wookie. Mo Bolden, the team's star hitter, grabbed one of the dark-colored wooden bats and began swinging it back and forth in front of him. As he held the bat above his head, he anxiously waited for the chance to smack the ball into outfield. Benny focused on Mo's strike zone. Suddenly, he released his first pitch with a burst of power. Strike, Coach Lewis yelled out with a grin on his face. Better keep your eye on the ball, Mo. Looks like we may have ourselves a real pitcher, Coach Porter joked. That boy ain't gonna hit nothing else. I'm about to knock this ball out the park, Mo said, with a furrowed brow on his face. He shuffled the dirt from side to side with his cleats and he got back into his stance, determined to hit the next ball. Oh, this is going to be sweet, Benny whispered into his glove as he prepared to deliver the next lightning-fast pitch across the diamond. Strike two, Coach Lewis yelled again. This time he put both hands on his hips and he stared at Benny for a minute. Hey, Benny, you wouldn't happen to be related to Fred and Eggy Bump Turner, Coach Lewis asked. Yes, sir, Benny replied with a slight grin on his face. That's my grandpa and my uncle. Now I'm going to forward on to chapter 11, Junior Love. Have you ever had a crush on someone? Well, in chapter 11, Benny shows the romantic side of his life as he tries to impress this young lady named Hattie B. Hattie B, Benny called out to the young girl. She struggled to open her locker. Hey, Benny, I'm going to be tardy in a minute unless I get this stupid locker open, Hattie responded abruptly, barely glancing at Benny. Here, let me help you, Benny replied as he rammed his shoulder against the metal locker to release the latch. Thanks. I sure appreciate that, Hattie replied. She grabbed her books and slammed the locker shut. She whisked down the hallway as her blue dress swayed behind her, leaving a trail of her floral fragrance. Benny watched her image shrink smaller and smaller into the distance as he inhaled deeply to savor the refreshing scent she left behind. Now I'm going to skip over to the final chapter, chapter 12. Now this is where We realized Benny has navigated through a lot of disappointments and a lot of unexpected events in his life. But baseball and all the important people in his life helped him deal with everything, even bullying from one of his biggest rivals. And here's an excerpt from chapter 12, the championship game on June 6, 1954. His face grew more intense as his confidence increased with every pitch. Strike, strike, strike. The umpire's voice echoed across the stadium like a parrot as one batter after another was forced to relinquish their bat and take a seat back on the Tide's bench. "What y'all doing out here?" Arthur screamed at his teammates, stomping the ground until a cloud of dirt swirled in front of him. "Turner is demonstrating his normal control of the ball, striking out 3 batters in a row. I hope the Tide has an answer to this stellar performance," the announcer yelled into his microphone. Arthur K. jeered at Benny as he jogged past him toward the clerk bench. "Your luck is about to run out, Henny Penny," he called to Benny. While still jogging ahead, Benny turned his head slightly to the side to respond to Arthur. I'm not lucky. I guess I'll have to depend on raw talent." So that is Pitch Black in a nutshell. And I'll just point out that the last page of the book actually has my dad's signature on many copies. And the only picture I was able to find of him in his uniform in Cardoza in 1954. And like I said, there are a few copies I have left with his actual signature because unfortunately he pitched his last inning on June 24th this year. And that's really what we put on the program, his final ending of life. But he pitched a good game, and I have a great story as his legacy. So I'm going to turn this back over to Antoine.
Hey, I'm back. Chris, that was great. So, I had a chance to have my, the sneak peek, and I just got to ask you quickly, what was your dad's initial reaction when he saw the final published copy of the book?
Well, it's funny because I tell people my dad was a man of very few words. And even when he had the opportunity to throw out the first pitch at a Nationals game before he passed about 3 years ago, he was totally not excited. It was like a regular day. So when I gave him the book, he was like, "This nice, baby." So him saying, "That's nice, baby," that was a big deal because that was a lot of words for him.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could just only imagine like what it was like. I mean, just for him to see his story brought to life. And I know you had mentioned to me yesterday that he had the opportunity to come on a tour with you to a few places. Oh man, how was this reaction then? For people to see that the actual person who the book was based on was there. How was that?
Oh man, that was awesome. He loved young people. So whenever young people would come up and, talk to him, he had the biggest smile. He still didn't say much, but he just had the biggest grin and he just nodded his head and, just had just an affirmation about, yeah, this is great.
Oh, wow. That is cool. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you, when did you know that you actually wanted to be an author?
Well, I've been writing since I was in elementary school. So pretty much I never considered myself an author per se, but just a lover of creative writing. And becoming an author didn't really strike me as much until I was in college and I had a children's literature course I took. And my professor said, "You should consider writing children's literature." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I did. I thought about it briefly, but it seemed like something that was just too big of a task. So I just said, I'll just write and see what happens. And eventually Pitch Black came into being.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I always tell people about my experience. I had to write my first book for our children's literature course at Bowie State. And at first I was like, oh man, I don't want to have to write a book. But long and behold, what, 8 years later, that's when I actually published my first book. But the best part is I had a chance last year to go back to that same class as a published author and speak to the students who were taking the class about why children's literature is so important. So
Yeah,
for everything to come back full circle, that was a big moment for me,
absolutely.
for that to come. So that was really cool. So,
Wow.
and you said your professor had motivated you to do it.
Yep, I got
That
an A on my when I got that A on the paper and she wrote the comment, I was like, okay, all right, I did pretty good.
no, that is cool that you had someone to motivate you to do that. Because I normally always ask the authors, who was your inspiration, mentors, along the way? Because when you're there trying to, find, go through the process by yourself, you run into a lot of hurdles because you don't know much about the process.
Yes,
So that was great that you actually want to at least motivate you to get the process started, because that's a big part. If you don't start, nothing will ever happen.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, and my biggest motivator to get the book complete was I wanted my dad to be around to read it. So it was like I had years of procrastinating start and stops, but I was like, I got to finish it so he can read the book. And so that was a beauty. Yeah, he was around long enough to read it and travel around with me to book events.
No, so that, I know, man, I can only imagine. I bet that was such a bright spot for him, and of course for you as well. But definitely, for him, I bet that was so cool.
Yeah, it was.
Honestly. Um, so how many books have you written so far?
This is my first published book. I'm actually in the process of finishing up another story, which is really the remainder of his life after high school, because he played ball in the U.S. Navy.
Oh
Um,
wow,
and then he came back home and did a lot of fast pitch softball, which used to be in Berry Farms and all the places around the nation. The city. He played for the Twangers fast pitch softball team. So I have a lot of his old teammates that I'm interviewing because they all have these great stories of playing in the Negro leagues and playing all these other places before they played together. And I'm like, who knew? So these
wow.
younger kids need to know that you got some famous people among us.
That's true. That's really cool that you had the opportunity to interview some of his former teammates. That, oh wow, and he's playing the Negro League, back in the day. So that is really cool. That is
Yes,
really cool.
yes.
Wow. And also with that, you said you're working on another book. What are some of the challenges you faced as an author, especially a self-published author?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of people get discouraged even writing a book. But then once you finish, you try to submit your manuscripts to big publishing companies, and they're like, we're not interested in unsolicited manuscripts. So then what do? You sit on your book? No, you self publish. And guess what? There's a big group of people who are interested in reading your book as a self published author. And I had to learn that after many, many rejections, I finally said, you know what? I don't need a big publishing company. I can do this thing. And once I did, it just rolled like butter. Everything just came together. So I tell people, don't get discouraged when people tell you no. Be more determined to finish it and make your own yes.
That's right. That's definitely the attitude that you need to have. I remember I tried to enlist my book into a curriculum of one of my favorite curriculum specialists, and he said no. Initially, I was devastated because I'm so used to working with their curriculum as a teacher. So I was like,
Mhm.
wow, to have my book in it would be such a big deal. And when they turned me down, I was really upset. But then that's what caused that fire in me to say, you know what? Eventually, I'm going to create my own curriculum to
There
go
you
with my
go.
own books. So, and then actually, we had a guest on here 2 weeks ago, Tony Settles. I love Tony. She created her own book fair called the Well Read Child Book Fair so that self-published authors will have an outlet.
Wow.
It's a traveling book fair. She would travel to different schools. So all the kids, from DC, Maryland, Virginia, will be able to experience all the different authors. So she made a way for, she's an influencer. So that was cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And that's taking the reins and making your own, making your dream come alive.
That's right. So that was really nice how she took that step. Like, you know what? Just like us, like, oh, okay, nobody wants my books. Oh, nobody wants to highlight, self-published authors. I'm gonna create my own book fair just for them.
That's
So
right.
I love when people just
Yes.
right, just take the reins and just run with it. So that was cool.
Yes.
What advice do you have for any aspiring authors? Because there may be some in our audience today who want to say, you know what, I want to start a book and I don't even know where to start.
Well, the one thing I say is if you have an idea, just start writing either on paper, typing it on the computer, and just saving little snippets. Characters, just start developing characters, developing them in your head, putting it on paper. And one thing I say is don't ever give up. So if you have something and you're like, and it's hard to get done, that means you need to get it done, because the easiest things in life aren't worth pursuing. It's the hard things that you need to go forward and have perseverance so you can have a sense of self-gratification. It's not for anybody else. Are you satisfied? If you're satisfied, that's all that matters.
Oh, that's good advice. Don't pursue the easy things, go for the hard things. That is true. Because I know for me, like I said, I will not be satisfied until my books are turned into an animated cartoon series and it's able to go mainstream on like a Netflix or, PBS or something like that. So I cannot stop. I can't stop.
I'm with you. I want to see the story lifted off the pages on a big screen. I don't care what screen it is, but I agree with you. Yes.
And I've been telling people, I said, I just always everybody the same question. I say, what do you do when your dream won't let you go? That's what I'm telling, because I've been in that position, like my dream, it talks to me, seeing my books, it's just great seeing the physical hard copy, like, wow, like I was able to do it. It came out of my head onto paper, into a physical book. But then when I just keep seeing it, like I said, on PBS, on Hulu, like it's constantly talking to me, right? So I know I have to constantly pursue it. I have to fuel the dream by continually taking more and more steps to see the dream become a reality, right? The same way it came from my head into a full manifestation, I have to take the same route to go from full hard copy book, to big screen or television screen. So
That's
it just talks.
Yeah, and the thing is, you should never be satisfied. I see people say, I published a book. You never just be satisfied with one accomplishment. You're still living and breathing, right? Go for the next thing. Maximize time, because time is just ticking away and we don't have time for loafers. You need to be productive and make sure that you have something of quality to share with people and share it. Why keep it to yourself? So yeah, I'm like, go for the big stuff.
That's true. That's true. You have to go for what you want, right? Because no one else will do it for you. So you got to make sure you take the time to put the effort in and go full force with no regrets. That's what I believe. With no risk, no reward.
There you go.
That's why I say go big or go home. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you completely. Here's a good question. As an author, do you like to read hardback books, right? Like have a nice physical book in your hand, or now more modern, more PDF copies, swiping, on your Kindle or on your iPad? What do you prefer when you're just reading, just leisure time? What do you prefer?
I'm old. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I like to touch and feel a book, and I love the smell of a new book. So I'm old school. I'm not with the swiping stuff. If that's your thing, that's fine. And I do have my book available electronically, but I love a hard copy book. I do.
Oh, I'm with you on that. When I have to read stuff, in PDF format, I definitely don't mind. But like I said, but when I see a book that I order, whether it's my own personal books that I have to ship from Amazon or someone else's book comes in the mail, and when you open that box, it just has that smell and you just pull through the pages. I'm like, yes, to have that hard copy, there's nothing like it.
Nothing like it. It really isn't. And just so you know, Antoine, the Pitch Black has an activity guide. This is hard copy and has a lot of fun things to do. So if you're a parent out there and you're trying to keep your kid occupied, get the book and the activity guide.
That would be great, guys. Like I said, if you a kid needs some extra reading or some activities to keep them busy, it will be a wonderful opportunity if you could pick up a copy or a few copies of Chris's books and the activities that go along with it. It will definitely help you. It'll be worth your while to get it. Yeah. Trust me.
Yes. We're in baseball season, even though we can't go to the world national champion Nat game in person. Who knew this time last year we would be not in a stadium?
I know, it's
virtually somewhere.
I know this is an interesting time that we live in, to say the least. Yeah. So, and also, Chris, with that being said, to piggyback off that, what do you do outside of being an author? Like, what do you enjoy doing? Like, what is your life like outside of Christine Turner Jackson, the author?
Well, a lot of people who know me know I also do stand-up comedy. So I have two characters. I have Sister Soldier, which kind of has morphed after being a teacher in PG County. I figured I should have been wearing camo the whole time.
Oh, see?
But, so I'm a stand-up comedian, and I have another character, Missy Fang. I perform now virtually for many audiences. I'm a calligrapher. So when I was in 8th grade here in DC Public Schools, I went to Alice Deal Junior High. I learned how to write in calligraphy. So I do a lot of calligraphy, and I started my own greeting card business. So I do that on the side as well. So if you want a one-of-a-kind, unique card that nobody else is going to have, Hallmark or anywhere else, Ink Potions is the place to go for that.
Oh, I like that. Ink Potions. Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. Wow, that's really fun. And it's good to learn different aspects of a person's life. So that's cool. Like calligraphy, the stand-up comedy, just have a well-rounded life, right? Just got to go for everything you want, right? Yeah. No settlement.
I tell people this is the life of an only child. So had a lot of time by myself. So creativity was kind of the way to go.
Oh, I'm with you. Like I'm the only child too, so I find myself always getting into something. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that wholeheartedly. Yes. And lastly, where can our audience get in touch with you? Like, how can they connect with you?
Well, I have a website, which is pitch-black.info. And I also have another way of getting in touch with me, which is through pitchblack.now.site, SITE. And you just give me your information. If you want a personalized copy of the book, I will get it out to you. And if you just want to connect and ask me other questions about self-publishing, writing a book, the writing process. And before I forget, shout out to my my Nationals Baseball Academy mentee, Kalaya Henry, who is an aspiring author. So hit me up on any of those platforms, and I'd love to connect with you.
All right. And because I forgot to ask you, as a kid, who were some of your favorite children's book authors? I forgot to ask you.
Well, my very first was Sharon Bell Mathis, and she wrote the story, A Sidewalk Story. And the funny thing is, her husband used to play softball with my dad. And I loved her stories. Oh my gosh. And those are like hardback books that she produced. I love Agatha Christie mysteries. And for comedy, Irma Bombeck. So, I mean, I just love to read all kinds of stuff. And of course, Dr. Seuss was, a mainstay in just about every household. And we used to have encyclopedias that were in hard copy. So I had a whole set of World Book encyclopedias. I love to read. And because my mom and my aunt, they were teachers, I had to read all summer, and I got 10 cents for every book that I read.
Oh, wow.
So, a whole dime.
That's right. A whole dime. That's funny. But Chris, I can say this. Thank you for giving up, your Friday morning, to spend with us. I know our audience, definitely had, a good time listening to those excerpts from the stories. I'm sure they'll probably pick up a few copies to learn what happens at the end. And
Yeah,
especially when your new book comes out to see the continuation of the
yeah.
story. Like I said, I'm really excited about that. So I give you early congratulations on that when that book comes out.
Thank
And like I said,
you.
I'm so glad that you came on the show. Like I said, it was a pleasure having you today. I look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Yes,
And thank you to PG County Memorial Library. You guys are always looking out for us, giving authors a chance to maximize our exposure. And we just thank you so much. And of course, to
thank
our
you.
viewers, you guys giving us your Fridays. Every Friday this summer, you guys are always on supporting us, always listening to great content. And this show just wouldn't be what it is without you. So I just want to thank you guys so much, everybody, for giving us your time on Fridays. But you guys have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you next Friday on Antoine and Friends. See you guys soon. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
weekend, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.